Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone? Welcome to the webinar. Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm super excited that you guys are here. So welcome in, welcome, welcome. So tonight I am going to be teaching you guys how to set up a trust. Some of you guys are familiar with what a trust is. Some of you guys never have heard of what a trust is. So you're going to learn that information tonight. So my name is Christina Yvette. I am the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth. And I'm going to teach you how to actually build wealth the right way and how to actually leave a legacy for your family, okay? So that is, if you came to this webinar for that information, then you are in the right space and place. So I do have some slides for you guys. So I'm going to do a short presentation. After the presentation, we'll dive into Q&A so that I can answer any and all questions that you guys might have based off of the information that I am about to go over this evening, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna share my screen in just a moment. So how are you guys doing? How is everyone on the call? Are you guys doing well on this lovely Thursday evening? All right, Claudia said great. All right. Awesome.
Yes, sis. Thank you, sister. Thank you for
You're
your time, honey.
you're welcome. Thank you for being here. All right, so I got my slides here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Let's see. There we go. All right, awesome. So, as I mentioned, I'm Christina Yvette, the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth, you guys. So, I have been a trust strategist for 10 years. I have been a trustee for 10 years, you guys. So, I have been operating a trust since 2015. And the way that I got into trusteeship was by way of real estate. So, I originally was a registered nurse by trade, and when I was in my career, I was trapped in the rat race. So I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was extremely frustrated because at that time in the beginning of my career, I had a 1-year-old baby and I wasn't spending any time with him at all. So just imagine being a new mom to a 1-year-old and you having to, chase the next dollar, right? And so those of you guys who know when you are in the medical field or nursing, you're working 12-hour shifts. So I was working 12 to 15 to 16-hour shifts 5, 6, 7 days a week, and I wasn't spending any time with my family. So when I realized that I was spending more time with my coworkers, I got frustrated. I told myself, you need another stream of income. You need another way of making money. You can't just only depend on the hospital for a check every other Friday. So I went to a real estate conference. In that real estate conference, I learned a lot about flipping houses. I learned more stuff about business and flipping houses than I've ever known in my entire life. And so 6 months after that conference, I bought my first property. I did not put a dollar into buying that property. I bought it with a hard money lender. My hard money lender was my mentor, and he told me, you need to put that property into a trust. So I set up the trust and I protected that property from any chances of me getting sued because when you buy a property to rehab it, because I was a flipper at that time, so I rehab the properties where I was fixing and flipping. So when you're rehabbing, anything can go wrong. Somebody could get electrocuted, and guess what? They're suing you and your house is gone, right? And so I couldn't take that chance being, a mom, being a career woman, being a newly real estate investor. So that's how I got into trusteeship was through real estate investing. And that was the best decision that I ever made because it has led me to this point here, okay? So let's dive into what an actual trust is, you guys. So hold on one second. Let's see what's up with these slides. There we go. All right, so let's talk about what a trust is. So a trust, you guys, is an entity. So you guys are entities, right? We are living, breathing entities. A trust is also a living, breathing entity. So out here in society, a trust is seen equivalent to a natural person, okay? So anything that you can do, a trust can also do. Now, how does this entity come into existence? Well, the way that this entity comes into existence or is established is through a contract. So this is what we call a contractual entity, okay? And so because it's a contractual entity, this contract is going to have many different sections in it. So the two sections that I want you to know about is the declaration, where you're declaring what it is and what it is not, and the actual indenture, which are the bylaws of the trust, which are the rules and regulations of how you want this trust to operate. So you're going to set up the trust now while you're living, right? Because now what you want to do is you want to be able to control everything that is inside of your estate, okay? You want to control this money from the grave, okay? And so the trust can actually put you in that position to be able to do that. So that's why now when you're setting up your contract, you're going to put all those rules and regulations. You're going to put those spendthrift provisions. You're going to put those restrictions in place so that the money can actually last the second and third generation. Because how many times have we seen it to where children, they're blowing their inheritance, to where families are losing the money during their lifetime? We've seen it so many times. And so that's why a trust can actually help us. So now that we know that this is a contractual entity and that we actually have to set up a contract with rules and regulations, or what we call bylaws, now who are the parties involved in this contract? Well, the parties are the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. The grantor is the person that created the trust. That is the person who is establishing the trust for the benefit of someone else or something else. That someone else is the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the inheritor of the trust. So that is the person who's actually going to receive the assets from the trust once the trust is terminated. But our goal is not to terminate the trust. Our goal is for the trust to continue to exist for hundreds and hundreds of years. This trust is designed to outlive you. So you're going to set it up for 100 years, but you actually want it to last 2, 3, 4, 500 years into the future. So the beneficiaries, that is how they're going to receive their inheritance. Your children are going to be named as beneficiaries. That's how your children are going to receive their inheritance versus whatever you have structured now, okay? So the beneficiaries receive the assets from the trust. They also receive what we call beneficial interest, right? And so that means that they're going to be receiving distributions from the trust. So if the trust is earning income, then they're going to get a portion of that income. And then the person who controls this entire thing or the entire estate, is the trustee. The trustee is the controller of the trust, so they control all the assets that are inside of the trust. They are the administrator of the trust. They are managing the assets that are inside of the trust. They are managing the trust funds, or the money that pertains or belongs to the trust, okay? So they are the individual that is so focused on operation and operating the trust on a day-to-day basis. They're doing the hiring, they're doing the firing, they're liquidating, they're selling, they're buying, they're doing all of that, okay? So the trustee has full control over the trust. That is who we name as the fiduciary. So when you have a trust estate, you only have one person who is the fiduciary, which is the trustee, okay? So that is the position that you want to be in, okay? So now there's several different types of trust, okay? I'm going to give you a couple of categories so that you can be very mindful. So the first category that I want to give you is express versus implied. So an express trust is a written trust, and an implied trust is a verbal or oral trust, okay? So you want everything in writing. The next category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. Simple is shorter in nature. Distributions are required. That means that you have to get rid of all the money that's inside of the trust, versus a complex. Complex is longer in nature. There's more rules, regulations, or bylaws. That means that you get to decide to keep money inside of the trust and you don't have to distribute it, okay? Next is discretionary versus non-discretionary. Discretionary trust is where you as the trustee is able to make decisions that are on the best interest of the trust that are not inside of the trust contract, right? Versus non-discretionary, which means that you cannot do those things, okay? So you cannot make decisions for the trust if it's not inside of the contract. The next one that I want to tell you guys about is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust is where you have every single state has their own statutes and codes. And so if you set up a trust and you put state statutes and codes, then it automatically becomes a statutory trust. With a statutory trust, you can only use it in that one state that you have set it up in. And usually your trust is going to be registered with the state, which makes it part of the public records, okay? So you have very limited privacy with a statutory trust versus a non-statutory. A non-statutory trust, what we're saying with that is that you don't have any state statutes or code. And so because you don't have any state statutes or codes, you can operate this trust in all 50 states as well as all of the US territories. So you don't have any limitations on where you can actually operate this trust. And because there's no state statutes and codes, you don't have to register with it, so your trust remains private, okay? And then the last category that I want to tell you guys about is revocable versus irrevocable. So when we're talking about revocability and irrevocability, we're only referring to one party out of that three-party contract. We're referring to the grantor. So what we're saying with a revocable trust is that the grantor has revocability. So typically they are, with a revocable trust, the grantor is the grantor, trustee, and beneficiary. So a revocable trust is seen as their alter ego. Because a revocable trust is seen as their alter egos, creditors can come after that trust, okay? So that means that that grantor is able to make amendments, changes, remove trustees and beneficiaries and assets, okay? Because creditors can come after a revocable trust, your assets are not protected in a revocable trust. So a revocable trust, in a sense, is only going to help you to avoid probate. It's not going to fully protect your assets. If someone was to sue your revocable trust, then it will go to court and the judge could pierce through the revocable trust and force you to produce the trust in court. If you have to produce the trust in court, that means that everyone is going to know the net worth, who the beneficiaries are, what assets you have inside of the trust. All right. Now, on the contrary to that, you have irrevocable. So with an irrevocable trust, the grantor and the trustee cannot be the same person. So because the grantor cannot serve as a beneficiary or a trustee, they have irrevocability, meaning that they cannot make changes to the trust, they can't terminate the trust, they cannot remove the beneficiaries, the trustees, or any assets inside of the trust. So because they're not the same person, your assets are actually fully protected. Creditors cannot come after a irrevocable trust, okay? If that irrevocable trust was to end up in court, then what would happen is the judge would decide not to pierce through an irrevocable trust, okay? So your assets are going to remain fully protected and your trust is going to remain private so that people don't know the net worth, what's inside of the trust, meaning the assets and who the beneficiaries are. All right, so now that you guys have a sense of the different categories that every single trust falls under, you have to determine which trust is the best trust for you and your family, okay? So when it comes to you creating the trust, step one is for you to determine the trust that you want. Now, out of the categories that I just mentioned to you guys, what I recommend is an express trust that is complex in nature, that is fully discretionary, that is non-statutory, and that is irrevocable. So that is what we call a bulletproof trust. So it falls under those 5 categories. That is what's going to hold up in court. That is what's going to make your trust estate impenetrable, okay? And that is what is going to fully protect your assets from creditors, okay? So you have to do your due diligence and your research to see which trust is best for you and your family. Let's move on to number two. The next thing that you have to do is you have to name the trust. Just like how your mom and dad named you, just like when you set up that business and you named that business, you have to go ahead and name that trust, okay? There's two mistakes that I see people make. The first one is that they'll name the trust after themselves. So if their name is John Smith, they're going to name the trust the John Smith Trust. That is the biggest mistake that you can make, because the reason why you're actually creating a trust is for privacy purposes, okay? And so you don't want it to be a dead giveaway because the trust is named after you, okay? The second thing is that they put the word trust in the actual name. That is not required. So you want people to not automatically know that it is a trust, okay? So stay away from those two things. The next thing that we need you to do is to appoint the different parties in the contract. So remember, you have a grantor, so you're and a trustee. So grantor and trustee cannot be the same person. You want to make sure that you are serving as the trustee, so you're going to appoint someone to be the grantor. Your children or another entity is going to serve as your beneficiaries. And the last appointment that you have to make is you have to put someone in a position as your successor trustee. So the successor trustee is the person who's going to take over after you in the event that something happens to you, meaning that if you expire, if you resign, or if you become incapacitated, someone needs to pick up where you left off. And so that's who that successor trustee is, okay? So just make sure that you're choosing someone who's qualified to do what you are doing. The next thing is that you're actually going to create the trust agreement. So you're going to have to create and establish that contract. One of the things that we stress the most is having spendthrift provisions. Spendthrift provisions are, so what a spendthrift is an individual who is going to blow the money, right? So those are your beneficiaries or the people who are entitled to receive distributions, okay? So what you want to do is you want to put different restrictions in there so that they are not spendthrifting. So one of the restrictions that we put is an age restriction. So with the age restriction, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and say, hey, this person has to be 25 years old before they can receive their distribution. Another one is an education restriction. So you can say, hey, they have to have a college education if they want to receive their distribution, right? So there's so many different restrictions that you can place on there, and you can also put yourself in a position to where you're controlling the money from the grave. You can also tell them what they need to spend the money on. If you want them to spend the money only on real estate, then you're putting that in there. If you want them to only invest in crypto, then you're putting those spendthrift provisions in there, okay? So now after you have finalized your contract, you have to get your contract notarized. So it is going to require two signatures, the signature of the grantor and the trustee. It's going to be witnessed by a notary public. That notary public is going to sign and place their seal on it, which legalizes your trust contract. Once your trust contract is notarized, now it's time for you to fund the trust, okay? So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to open up a trust bank account, right? And so you can open it up with a bank, with a credit union, with a brokerage. So any financial institution that offers a trust account. The types of accounts are typically you have your checking accounts, your savings accounts, your money market accounts, your cash management accounts, and your brokerage accounts. All of those are considered trust funds, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to fund it with whatever dollared amount that you want. So typically the dollared amount is going to be it's going to be whatever you want, but the banks have their minimum. Some banks are $100, some banks are $500. So just be mindful of who you decide to establish a banking relationship with, okay? So now what are you going to actually bring to the bank with you? Well, when you go to establish that bank account, they're going to ask you for two things. They're going to ask you for the certificate of trust or proof of identity that the trust exists. They're also going to ask you for the employer identification number. So those are the two things that you're required to bring with you. So just like how you walk around with a driver's license, the trust also walks around with identification, which is a certificate of trust, okay? And that EIN number is the 9-digit number, just like how you have a social. The trust is also going to have a 9-digit number that's associated with it, okay? So you're going to provide that to the bank. They're going to open up a trust account for you. You're going to fund it. Now that you have funded your trust fund, the next thing that you have to do, which is the most important thing, is you have to transfer assets into the trust, okay? So the types of assets that you can transfer into the trust are your house, your car, cash money, insurance policies, furniture, equipment, businesses, anything that's considered an asset. It could be heirlooms, it could be jewelry, it could be weapons, anything, right? Baseball cards, whatever it is. So, the most um important thing is that if there's any legal transfer that needs to happen, that you're actually doing it. So typically our largest investment or our biggest asset that we have is our home, okay? And so with that primary residence that you have, you want to make sure that you're transferring it into the trust. So what you're going to do is when you bought that home, you received a deed. And so you need to redeed that property over into the name of the trust, okay? So when you redeed that property over, what you're deeding it over is from your personal name into the trust. Then you're going to record that deed with the county recorder's office. They're going to then update their public records to show that that house is owned by that trust. So it's no longer owned by you. So that is how you're going to protect the assets, okay? So asset protection is the number one reason why you actually want to set up a trust, right? So it's not only for privacy, but it is for asset protection. So what can a trust actually protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcies, from divorce, from foreclosures. It can also protect you from heavy taxations, from lawsuits, and from probate, okay? So let's just talk about a few of these briefly. So the first one is divorce, right? Now, with divorce, right, the way that a trust can actually protect you from divorce is because a divorce is a transfer of wealth, okay? And it is a lawsuit between two spouses, okay? And so when you are getting a divorce, the court system is only going to include the things that are in your personal name, okay? So that means your 401k, the house, the cash in your checkings account, any pensions, your bank accounts, anything like that, crypto, whatever it is that you have, your vehicles, your credit cards, debt, liabilities, all those things are included, okay? And so what you need to realize is that the way that a trust can actually protect you is if you have a trust set up and you have assets inside of that trust, because that trust is not you and you are not the trust, which means that that trust cannot be pulled into your divorce. So those assets that are inside of that trust are protected from your divorce, okay? So just be mindful. The same thing kind of works with a lawsuit. So do not wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit. That's the biggest mistake that people make. We do not walk around here thinking that we're going to get sued. But in all actuality, if you live in the United States of America, every single person wants to sue you. Your brother wants to sue you, your neighbor wants to sue you, your college best friend wants to sue you, your employer wants to sue you, your employee wants to sue you, okay? So do not wait until that's happening for you to then realize, hey, I need to protect my assets, okay? So let me give you an example, okay? A lot of us, we are business owners, right? And so we have what you call an LLC. So what does an LLC stand for?
Limited
Limited
liability.
liability company.
Perfect. You guys got it. Okay, I love it. Thank you. So LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. So you hear it in the actual name, right? It says limited liability. So the company has limited liability, as you've just heard and mentioned. So if the company has limited liability or half liability, who do you think has the other portion of that limited liability?
Owner.
Exactly. Thank you so much. All right. So now, almost all of you guys that are on this call, if you have an LLC or if you have a business, you directly are the owner of the business. That is a big mistake because if anything happens to the business, meaning if your client or your customer wants to sue you and they actually and they actually go after the business, then they can also come after you. Why? Because let's just say that your client sues you for $500,000, right? And it's easy for them to find out who the business owner is because you're all over the public records. All they have to do is go down to the Secretary of State. Once they go to the Secretary of State, then they're able to find that you are the owner because it's on the public records, okay? So now they initiate this lawsuit, you go into litigation, you end up with a judgment of $500,000. Now, can your LLC cover a judgment of $500,000? If it can, then you're fine. If it cannot, meaning that that LLC can't cover that $500,000 judgment, then what can happen is the judge can decide to pierce through the corporate veil. If the judge pierces through the corporate veil, which the corporate veil is that little bit of protection that you thought you had with an LLC. If the judge pierces through that corporate veil, they're going to go after the authorized member. The authorized member is you. So that means they're going to come after you. Why? Because you are liable. Okay. And so if they come after you, what can they do? They can literally seize all of your assets in order to cover that judgment. So that means that that house that you and your children live in, they can take it. That car that's in the driveway, they can take it. The jewelry that you have on, anything, right? They can take it, as well as they can garnish your bank accounts. Okay. So that literally means that they can go right into your checkings, your savings, and even go as far as garnishing any W-2 income that you might have outside of what's already in your bank account. Okay. So that is really, really a nasty process. And it literally takes one lawsuit for you to lose it all. We've seen it with other people, and thank God we haven't experienced it, or some of us have, and you do not want to wait until that happens to you, okay? Because it happens unexpectedly, okay? So with that being said, what you want to do is, instead of you owning your business, what you need to do is you need to have your business owned by the trust, okay? So you're going to set up a business trust. You're going to have the business trust be the owner of the LLC, because if somebody tries to sue the LLC, then they can come after the trust, and then the trust is going to be protected, okay? So that is how you want to operate moving forward, because that business trust is now going to be the holding company, and it's going to hold that asset, which is the LLC. Please remove your name as the owner of the LLC, okay? Because you're doing yourself and your family a disjustice by having it structured that way, okay? So what's the next thing that a trust can actually protect us from? Well, it can protect us from probate, right? So let me ask you guys a question, right? So if you guys have, the house that you live in, right? And you didn't wake up tomorrow, how do you think that house is going to be transferred to your son or your daughter? That is the question. How is that house going to be transferred? The ownership of that property, how is it going to be transferred to your son or your daughter if you don't wake up tomorrow? Because last time I checked, is your name that's on the deed.
Through
Gonna go-
probate court.
Yeah.
Yep. So you guys got it right, through probate court. So you mean to tell me that you already know that your children are going to have to go to court. That's what you're telling me right now on the call. Because you just answered the question and you told me probate. So that means that you're leaving it up to a judge to make the decision if your daughter is going to receive your house, if your son is going to receive the money that's in your bank account. That judge doesn't know who you are. That judge doesn't know your children. So you're leaving it up to a complete stranger. Last time that I checked, you worked very hard for the assets that you've accumulated, for the wealth that you built, for the savings account that you have, for your retirement. You worked very hard. So the way that you have things structured right now, unfortunately, your children are going to end up in probate. If you continue to have things structured the way you have it now, okay? Your children are going to end up in probate. Our children are losing their inheritance. Why? Because we have bought into this lie. The lie that we have bought into is that my kids are automatically going to get my house. No. That is a lie. Your children are not going to automatically get your house. Why do you think people's houses are being auctioned off by the county? Because they did not have their affairs in order. Because those houses need to be sold and liquidated to pay off debt. So stop buying into these lies, or stop assuming I only have one child. There's nobody that's going to fight for my house. That's a lie too. Do you know who wants to fight for your house? Your creditors. It doesn't matter that you only have one child, right? But we bought into this lie, right? And so let me break down what the probate process looks like, because unfortunately, all of us are going to go through the probate process unless, so probate is inevitable unless there's only one way to avoid probate. One way and one way only. Only one way. The only way to avoid probate is by setting up a trust estate. Because at the end of the day, you need an estate. At the end of the day, you're going to have an estate. You need to determine if you're going to create the estate now while you're living, or if you're going to sit back, relax, not do anything, procrastinate, and allow the state where you're a resident to establish the state for you. So for example, if you live in Texas and you didn't wake up tomorrow, the state of Texas is going to create an estate for you because you didn't do it yourself. And now that the state of Texas has created the estate for you, they're going to transfer all of your assets into that estate. Your house, your car, the cash money that you have inside of your bank account. And now your estate, right? The John Smith estate is going to go straight to probate. A lot of people, they have wills and they think, oh, a will is good enough. No, a will is not good enough. A will is automatically going to end up in probate because a will is a set of instructions for probate. A will cannot own anything. So once you have a trust, a will is obsolete. Okay? Now, when the state of Texas creates an estate for you, they place all of your assets into the estate. Your estate goes into probate, right? Your estate is now in the probate court. It needs to be represented by a probate attorney, and you have a probate judge that is going to now make the decisions for your estate. The first thing that happens is the judge is going to the judge is going to take care of your liabilities. So they're going to pay off all of your debt. Okay. So if you have credit card debt, if you have student loan debt, if you have, medical bills, a lot of people, we don't even think of how many medical bills we rack up at the end, right? So if you didn't wake up tomorrow, you rest assured that you got hospital bills, you got ICU bills, you got nursing home bills, right? And so now you owe Medicaid, Medicare, all of these different agencies. You didn't think about that, right? But guess what? ICU bills, Medicare, Medicaid, $100,000. If you don't have $100,000 liquid in your bank account to be able to cover that, where do you think that money's going to come from? Somebody come off mute and let me know where that $100,000 for Medicaid and Medicare is going to come from.
They're gonna take
Your assets.
Exactly. They're going to pull it out your assets. How are they going to do that, right? So if you don't have the liquid cash in your estate, they're going to start to liquidate those assets, which means that now they're going to sell your house. Now your house is for sale, right? And you have to understand what's happening during this time, right? You have children that are grieving. They just lost the most important person in their life. And now you're dragging them through the probate process, right? And now you're having them fight in court. You're having them fight in court for who? To keep mom's house, to keep dad's house, right? Why? They have to go through all of this because you didn't have your affairs in order, right? And so, yes, the judge is going to liquidate your assets in order to cover hospital, Medicare, Medicaid, nursing home, credit cards, every single creditor that wants to come after your estate. And when I tell you they come out the woodworks, even a strange family, out the woodworks, okay? So now that we know and understand, right, what happens, first, the second thing that happens is that the probate attorney takes their fees, and then you have the probate court, which takes their fees, right? So you have liabilities, you have attorney fees, court fees, and now whatever is left over is what your children get. So your children literally are getting the leftovers. So when I tell you that your children are losing their inheritance, I really mean it. I see it on a daily basis and it frustrates me. And that's why I'm on this Zoom with you right now. Okay? So we need to get our affairs in order so that our children can stop losing their inheritance and we can actually intentionally build the generational wealth that we're here to build, right? And so what you need to do now is you need to know and understand that probate is only inevitable if you set up your estate while you're living. You have the power to do that. So why are you going to wait for Texas to create your estate after you're gone, right? When you can actually create your estate now while you're living. So now this whole process, the way that it works is if you decided, yeah, I want to get my affairs in order, let me go ahead and set up my trust, right? You set up your trust. You've already transferred during your lifetime, you transferred your house into the trust, your car into the trust, the cash money into the trust, right? And you didn't wake up tomorrow. Guess what happens? Guess what happens? Anybody want to take a guess? All right.
You skip probate.
Thank you. Thank you. That was the answer. You skip probate. Exactly. So if you have your affairs in order, you didn't wake up tomorrow, your successor trustee is going to take over where you left off. Your children get to grieve in peace because they avoid the entire probate process. And that debt that you had at the end of life, that debt dies with you. So the creditors cannot come after your trust estate, right? They can only come after what you had in your personal name, and you decided that you was smart and that you didn't want to own anything in your personal name, and that everything was going to be held into the name of the trust because the trust is going to outlive you. So you get to avoid that entire process, and your children, they actually receive their inheritance because they're the beneficiaries of your trust and your assets are inside of the trust. That is how you want to transfer wealth. That is how your wealth is going to actually reach the generations. You cannot come walking around here saying I'm building generational wealth if you don't have the tools to build the generational wealth. So I empower you to set up your trust estate now while you're living, okay? So let's get back to the slide so I can land this plane, okay? So the next thing that I want to show you guys is the wealth building formula, okay? The wealth building formula, this is how you're going to build wealth with your trust, okay? So I have 3 pillars here. I have structure, credit, and invest. Structure, let's talk about it because it's so vitally important. If you're not structured this way, then you need to get restructured, okay? So the first thing that you need to do is that you need to have multiple trusts within your structure, okay? So I have 3 trusts here that I highly recommend, okay? So it's a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. I recommend that everyone have a for-profit and a nonprofit within their structure, okay? So that is how you're going to be able to build this estate efficiently and effectively, okay? So with that being said, let's talk about the business trust. So the first thing that I need you to know is that this trust can be operated in 2 different ways. The first way is that you can operate it as a holding company, meaning that it's non-operational. So that means that you're going to establish this business trust for the purpose of holding your LLCs and your corporations. So it's going to own those LLCs and corporations, and it's not going to have any products or services, okay? So that is how the business trust, if you're operating it as a holding company, that is how it's structured. Now, the second way is if you actually want to build a business, you can utilize a business trust in order to build the business. So if you wanted a real estate investment company or e-com or a restaurant or a trucking company, whatever it is that you want, right? You can build that business trust instead of setting up an LLC or a corporation. What you can do is you can establish a business trust, and then it can be fully operational where you have employees, you have products, you have services, all of those things, okay? So you have to determine how you actually want to operate this type of trust, right? And so typically, if we're operating it as a holding company, the business trust is going to serve as the authorized member of the officers of the business, okay? So let's just say that you have an LLC. This LLC, right, is generating $100,000. And so what you'll do is, because it's owned by the business trust, you can do a K-1 distribution to the owner, and that money can be moved from the LLC into the business trust, okay? And so if that money is moved into the business trust, then what will happen is, one thing that I love about these entities is that a business trust it is a for-profit entity, so it files a 1041, okay? So just like how you file a 1040, a business trust is separate from you, and so it has its own return, which is a 1041, okay? But my favorite thing is that you are going to spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers, okay? I'm going to say that again. You spend the money first and you are taxed on the leftovers. So with this type of trust, what's going to happen is you have a bunch of operating expenses that's going to serve as your tax write-offs or your deductibles. So out of that 100,000 that came in, let's just say you have 30,000 in operating expenses that are automatically written off. Now you have $70,000 that's left. You have to pay taxes on that $70,000. So you can normally pay your taxes and be done. Or what you can do is you can distribute, okay? So with the trust, you can do a distribution. So you're going to distribute that $70,000 to the beneficiary, and then that is 100% tax deductible, which means that you don't have to pay taxes on that $70,000, okay? So we had $100,000 that came into the business trust. 30 of it was designated to operating expenses, and we wrote it off. 70 of it was designated as a distribution, and we wrote it off. So now we have a 0% tax liability. We're done paying taxes for the business trust, okay? So now that 70,000, it went to the beneficiary. So who is the beneficiary of the business trust? Well, we structure it to the point that we make the family trust the beneficiary of the business trust. Why? Because if you are a business owner or entrepreneur, then that money that's coming from the business needs to be able to be utilized in order to provide for the family, okay? So that 70,000 was distributed from the business trust to the family trust. So now the family trust just received 70,000 in income. The family trust does have to pay taxes on that 70,000. Now, once again, the thing that I love the most about the trust is that you spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers. So out of that 70,000, we're going to spend what we need to spend on the family. So if you have tuition, if you have gas, if you have maintenance, if you have taxes, if you have mortgage, if you have rent, if you have any of these things, right? All of those are tax write-offs, okay? So let's just say out of the 70,000, it costs 60 in order to provide for the family. So now you have $10,000 that's left. So normally you would pay $1,000 in taxes on that $10,000, okay? Or what you can do is you can do what we call a charitable contribution. The charitable contribution is where you donate to your tax-exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So you can donate up to 60% of your annual gross income into that trust. So that 10,000, we want to donate it into our tax-exempt trust. And now on the family trust level, we have a 0% tax liability. We're done paying taxes. So with the family trust, your children are going to be the beneficiaries, okay? The next trust is your tax-exempt nonprofit trust. It's also known as a 508c1a, or it can be known as a charity or ministry trust, a charitable trust. So there's different names of faith-based organization or FBO, okay? So it can be known as a church as well. So you can name it anything that you want. So it falls under the category of being a faith-based organization, and it is automatically exempt from federal taxes due to the separation of church and state, okay? So as long as you've designated that you are operating this type of entity, then any type of money that comes in that is either a donation or a tithe, you do not pay taxes on. If it comes in as income, anything over 5,000, you do pay taxes on. So just be mindful of that, okay? So as I mentioned, for example, if you are a W-2 employee, right, then you can donate up to 60% of your annual gross income into this trust. And then that means that you're only going to be taxed on 40% of your income versus 100. So it can actually help you reduce heavy taxation, because a lot of us are giving away half of our money to the government, especially if we're in those high income states like California and New York, okay? So with this type of trust, with that type of trust, it's just vitally important, like I said, that you have all three of them within your structure, okay? Because it's going to help you, build wealth, like I said, efficiently and effectively. It's gonna help you build wealth faster. So let's move on to the next pillar, which is credit, OPM, other people's money. What you need to do is you need to be able to leverage other people's money, specifically the bank's money, okay? So one thing is that you can qualify for grants. The second thing is that you're able to build business credit, okay? So you're going to utilize the business trust in order to build business credit, all right? And so this is something that you want to do. You want to leverage not only your personal credit, but business credit, because you qualify for higher lines of credit, okay? So as soon as you get that paydex score of at least 80 or above, then you're able to get, like I said, higher lines of credit for credit cards, lines of credits, and loans, okay? So with that being said, that is how you're able to put yourself in a position to where the trust can sustain itself. Now, the next thing we're going to move towards is invest. So these are the assets that I recommend. The first one is an index universal life insurance policy, and the second one is real estate. Okay, so we'll break those two down in just a moment. So when it comes to life insurance, a lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they are dead. But in all actuality, life insurance is actually supposed to be utilized when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance and not dead insurance, okay? So with that being said, you want to be able to leverage all of the living benefits that are inside of your life insurance policies, okay? So let's break this down. So when it comes to life insurance policies, your policy, your life insurance, it is actually protected. So if somebody sues you, they cannot come after your life insurance policy, okay? So keep that in mind. The next thing is that with this policy, you are the insured, right? So your life is pretty much protected. So it's insured. So if anything happens to you, then there is a death benefit associated with the policy. So that means that if you don't wake up, that death benefit goes to your beneficiary, okay? There's also cash value that is building up with this type of policy, okay? And so when it comes to cash value, when you are going to pay your premium, let's just say your premium's $100. So $20 is going to go to the carrier for the cost of insurance, and then $80 is going to go to your cash value. So you're going to be accumulating cash inside of your life insurance policy, which is what you want, because this cash is then going to be earning compound interest. How? Well, you see inside of the name, it says index universal life insurance policy, right? So when we are referring to this policy, when we're referring to the word index, we're referring to the stock market. And because we're referring to the stock market, we're specifically referencing the indices in the stock market. So the indices are the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow Jones, okay? Just to name a few. So with this type of policy, right, what happens is you are going to be accumulating cash. That cash is going to be earning compound interest because it's going to be mirroring the market. So your money is not at risk. Your money is not inside of the market. It's only mirroring the market. So what the carrier does is they look at what you have in your cash value, and they look at how the market performed and they match it. So if the market did 9%, then they're going to give you 9% returns on the cash value in your IUL policy, okay? And so that is the position that you want to put yourself in, to where you're earning compound interest, okay? Because a lot of us, we're so used to working for money, right? But what we really need to do is we need to put our money to work for us, okay? So your money, you need to deploy it. You need to park it in places like an IUL policy, right? Because then you're deploying it and it is going out to work and it's bringing back friends. So every single dollar is going out, is bringing back 10 cents, which is what you want, right? So then you're putting that money in a position to where it's going to grow. It's going to get pregnant. It's going to grow babies, right? Which is what you want, okay? So with that being said, the beautiful thing about the IUL policy is that, as I mentioned, when it comes to the trust is going to be the owner of the policy. The trust is going to pay the premiums of the policy. You are going to be the insured, and the trust is going to be the beneficiary of the policy. Why? Because in the event that something happens to you, the trust needs to be compensated for that, okay? For that loss, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is real estate, right? So when it comes to real estate, the trust is able to own real estate. The trust is able to get a mortgage, a home equity line of credit, or just in general purchase real estate, okay? So what you typically want to do is you want to put the trust in a position to where it can acquire assets. The way that it's going to acquire assets is based on what we said previously, OPM, other people's money. You need to use the bank's money. Why? Because the bank is using your money, okay? So when it comes to the real estate, what needs to happen is you want to put yourself in a position to where you are purchasing like a fourplex or a fiveplex, okay? And you're going to use what we call a DSCR, which is the debt service coverage ratio loan. So they're going to lend you about 80% or so, just depending on the loan, right? So they can lend you up to 80% of the purchase price. And then what you want to do is you want to be able to get that down payment, right? So you have to find the 20% down payment somewhere. So remember previously we said that when it comes to business credit, you get higher lines of credit. So what you want to do is you want to be able to establish that business credit, get a line of credit or a credit card, and let's just say they give you, 50,000, right? So now you have a credit card for 50,000. You're going to take that 50,000, you're going to strip that credit card and you're going to use it. The first place that you're going to park that 50,000 is inside of your index universal life insurance policy. Why? Because you want to be able to funnel money into your policy so that the money that's inside of the cash that's inside of your policy is accumulating, okay? That is your whole goal, is for you to be able to put yourself in a position to where you pay yourself first. So that money that you're taking from the credit card, you're going to put it into the IUL so you can pay yourself first. And then what you're going to do is that cash value, it goes up by 50,000. You're going to request a loan from the insurance carrier. So the insurance carrier, they see your insurance policy as an asset. It is a liquid asset. They're going to look at your policy. They're going to look at your cash value. They're going to be like, yeah, he has 50,000 in cash value. So we'll give him 49,000, 49,500. Right? Because they don't give you 100%, but they can give you 95, 98, 99. Okay. So with that being said, the life insurance company is going to do a direct deposit and they're going to put that money back into your checking account. Now, the money is actually originating from the life insurance company's reserves, okay? So that money is coming from them. That money is not being taken out of your policy. So your 50,000 is still sitting in your policy, is earning compound interest, and is gonna be earning 9, 10, 11, 12%, whatever the market is doing, okay? So your money is working for you. You are borrowing the insurance company's money in order for you to park it into real estate for you to then be able to flip it and multiply it, and for you to put it in a position to where it's going to be cash flowing, okay? So that 50,000 that you took from the business credit card, now you're parking it in two places. You're parking it inside of the IUL policy, you're parking it inside of real estate, okay? So remember, we borrowed the 49,500. We put it as a down payment on real estate. Now we have our fiveplex, okay? So let's just say our rent is, $5,000 a month, right? So now we just got that $5,000 a month, right? And so we just acquired real estate zero down, you guys. So 80% came from the DSCR loan, 20% came from our business credit cards. So we bought that property zero down using OPM, which is what you want to do. My first property that I ever bought, I bought it zero down. I did not put $1 of my own money. I used OPM, and every single property that I've bought since, I use OPM, other people's money. I do not put my own money into these real estate transactions. And so this is what you need to do. This is what I want you to understand. You do not have to use your own money. You have to leverage the bank, because the bank is leveraging you, right? And so I'll talk about that in just a moment. But when it comes to the real estate, right? So you just acquired it 0 down. So now when you are taking that rental income, right? So you have an asset now. So the trust has an asset now. And this trust is gonna be collecting $5,000 a month off of rental income. So where is the first place that $5,000 is going to go when you collect the rental income from this property that you just acquired for the trust? Yep. Back into the IUL. Thank you. So yes, it is. It's going to go straight. You're going to park it straight into the index universal life insurance policy. Okay. So that's the first place that it's going to go. Then you're going to pull that money out and you are going to park it where it needs to go. So you're going to park it into that mortgage payment. You're going to park it into the credit card payment, and then whatever is left over is going to go straight into the trust fund. And then you're going to rinse and repeat and do it again. So that's exactly what you want to do. And that's the position that you want to put the trust in order for it to sustain itself. Okay. And so back to what I was saying about using other people's money, the bank's money. The bank is using your money in order to get rich. Okay. And so you need to do what the bank is doing, because a lot of people don't even know that the bank, their number one asset is life insurance policies. It's called BOLI, B-O-L-I, bank-owned life insurance. So if the bank's number one asset is life insurance, do you think that your number one asset should also be life insurance? I think so. All right. So with that being said, let's keep moving forward. All right. So what you need to do is you need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. That is stewardship. So that is you being a good steward of your wealth, you guys, versus how you're operating now, which is ownership. Okay. So a lot of us, we're operating in ownership right now. And so what we are so proud of is to be the owner of our property, right? And that is not necessarily the goal, because we have bought into the lie of what society wants for us, which is for us to use our name and our social security number for everything. But in all actuality, if you did not wake up tomorrow, right, that house is still going to be there. And so if you know that house is still going to be there, then in all actuality, what you really want is control over that house while you're living. So right now you're operating in ownership, but you need to be operating in stewardship, because you want control over that property, and you can still get control over that property through the trust, right? So the trust is going to be the owner and you're going to be the trustee, which means that you control that property, which is what you want. That is what your true desire is, for you to control those assets while you are living. Okay. So stop operating in ownership and now transition and start operating in stewardship. So now let me ask you a question, and you can come off mute and let me know what the answer is. Have you ever asked yourself, how am I going to transfer this wealth? How am I going to transfer this property? How am I going to transfer these assets? Have you ever asked yourself that question?
Yes.
All right. Awesome, awesome. So did you have a plan in place or a solution when you started to ask yourself that question?
No, because I never knew about this information, and it's funny because it kind of aligned with my job. I'm a bodily injury specialist, so I deal with when you die in a car accident and there's no estate, and I that's the first thing I see, the attorneys and the families fighting over property.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because it's so true. And absolutely, that is the first thing that happens. So we haven't asked ourselves this question, right? A lot of us, and that's why I'm planting these seeds right now, so that you can begin to start to think about this whole process of how am I going to transfer my wealth? So what I want to show you guys is steps that you can take in order to transfer your wealth, right? So there's something called TCUs, which stands for Trust Certificate Units, which are equivalent to stock certificates, okay? So you know how stock certificates represents ownership in a business or a corporation? Well, trust certificate units represents beneficial interest in a trust. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up a trust estate, and this trust estate automatically is going to have 100 units that are created, and you have to distribute these 100 units. So you're going to distribute them to your beneficiaries, okay? So let's just say you have 4 kids and you want to distribute 25 units to each child. So now you've distributed the whole 100 units, okay? So for example, if I'm one of your children and I have the 25 units, then that means that I have 25% of beneficial interest in the trust. Let's just say that the trust is worth $1 million, right? It has assets, it has cash, it has all of these things, right? And so what that is now going to equate to is that I have beneficial interest that is worth 250,000 of that $1 million. So if that trust was terminated today, then I would either receive assets worth 250, or I would receive cash, worth 250, whatever it looks like inside of the trust, okay? So the whole goal is not for the trust to be terminated. The whole goal is for when that trust is due to be expired, that you or whoever the successor trustee is at that time, they renew the trust for an additional 100 years. So now your trust is existing for 200 years, and it's going to now lead to the 3rd generation and the 4th generation and the 5th generation, okay? Which is what you want ideally, okay? So that is what an actual transfer of wealth looks like if you want those beneficiaries to receive their inheritance without any issues, okay? The next thing that I want to go over is preservation of wealth, right? Because a lot of us, we've seen it to where wealth is not preserved, to where families blow wealth, right? We've seen it with athletes, we've seen it with celebrities and famous families, that their wealth, they either blow it in their lifetime or it doesn't even last, the next generation, right? And the reason why we are not able to preserve our wealth to the 2nd and 3rd generation is because we don't have the tools in order to preserve our wealth. So what are the tools that you need in order to preserve your wealth? Well, you need obviously a trust, because the trust will outlive everyone inside of the trust, okay? And the second tool that you need is the life insurance policies. So what happens when you are in the space where you want to conserve and preserve is the trust is going to insure everything. So the trust insures all of its assets, right? So the trust has a house, that means it has homeowners insurance. The trust has a car, that means it has car insurance. The trust has cash money in the bank, that means it has FDIC. So what you need to understand is that you are a human asset inside of the trust. So the trust is going to insure all of its human assets. So those human assets are the trustees, the beneficiaries, and all of the future beneficiaries, right? So what happens is the trust is going to take out a policy on every single person that is associated with the trust, and you are going to be the insured. The trust is going to be the owner, the payer, and the beneficiary, so that if something happens, right? Meaning that if you didn't wake up tomorrow, the trust is actually experiencing a loss. The trust needs to be compensated for that loss. So you have a death benefit of $2.5 million. That $2.5 million is automatically transferred to the trust estate, okay? The trust fund. And the trust fund is now replenished with $2.5 million, right? So that is what that preservation looks like. Now, what you need to also understand is that when now that the trust is going to put a policy on the trustees, the beneficiaries, and the future beneficiaries, those future beneficiaries are trust fund babies. So when this baby is born into the trust, the trustee is going to take out a policy once that baby's 30 days old. Now the trustee is paying the premiums of that life insurance policy, okay? So this trust fund baby, when that baby, let's just say that they grow up and they are now 18 years old, right? Normally what happens when they're 18 years old, they go and get their first car. So what happens is with this trust fund baby, they can normally go to the dealership and they're able to buy their first vehicle normally, right? So they can get into a car loan, high interest, pay $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car, right? Or what they can do is they can go to the trust and they can request a loan. So when it comes to the trust organization, beneficiaries and trustees are able to receive and give loans to the trust. So that trust fund baby, which is a beneficiary inside of the trust, they go to the trustee and they request a loan for $30,000. That trustee then goes and writes a check for $30,000, hands it to the beneficiary. They go and buy their car cash. So now instead of them spending $1,000 at the dealership, they're able to now spend let's say $300 with the trust, right? And so the trust is now able to recover that money and earn some interest, which is good. So let's just say you're into the future, that beneficiary decides that they want to default onto that loan. That default is completely okay because the money did not originate from the trust fund. The money actually originated from the trust fund baby's life insurance policy. So what happened when that beneficiary requested that loan for $30,000, that trustee went and contacted the carrier and actually requested a loan from the carrier from their life insurance policy that trust fund baby is the insured of. And so the carrier issued them a check for $30,000 into the trust fund. And so then the trustee issued that check for $30,000 to the beneficiary, and that's where the money originated from. So it actually is a risk-free loan because that money is automatically going to be deducted from the death benefit once that trust fund baby transitions. Okay, that money goes, it's deducted from the death benefit and it goes straight into the trust. Okay, so that is how you are going to begin this entire cycle of you establishing wealth, you transferring wealth, and you preserving wealth. Okay, so these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do, which is a really good book that teaches you about the connection between life insurance and trust. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2, teaches you about trusteeship, which is very important. Family Wealth teaches you how to run your family like a business. And then the last one is the Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust. So what I am saying is take action on the information that I provided you guys with tonight. So it was a wealth of knowledge and information, but a trust estate can be your new form of doing business, everyone. It could be your new form of making a decent profit. It could be your new form of saving on taxes, on protecting your assets, and on getting structured properly, and even operating your entities properly. So you want to treat this like a big business. You want to treat this like a Google, like a Facebook, like an Amazon. You don't want to treat this like no little small mom and pop shop, because this is not what that is, okay? So I want to show you a quick little video of someone who took action on the information that I provided tonight.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days, and I guess that's the big thing. Don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions. Things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
All right, so let's work together, you guys. I do have a program that teaches you guys step by step how to actually get properly structured and how to establish these trusts. So the 3 trusts that are included in the program are the ones that I mentioned, which is the business trust, the family trust, and the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So the 3 options that you have is, the first one is do it yourself, where we have an online course. It has 43 video modules, and it has all of the trust templates. And what you'll do is you will download the templates, you'll watch the modules, and you'll be able to set up your own trust. You do have lifetime access to these course, and you have lifetime access to the resources and ebooks. So the resources are things like tax documents, board meetings, paperwork that you need in order to transfer your house, your cars, stuff like that. And then the ebooks are the books that I mentioned. You get them in electronic form. And so some of those books, if you were to purchase them independently, they're like over $800. So we do also have a private Facebook community and a Telegram chat so that you can stay connected with the other trustees inside of the program, which are like-minded individuals that have already gone through what you are about to embark on. So the do-it-yourself course is only $997. The second option is Done With You. So with Done With You is where we do it in a workshop, okay? So the workshop is coming up next week, actually, so it starts on Monday. And so what happens is it's a total of 5 group Zoom calls. So it is Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? And so on Monday, we meet and we will set up the business trust together. So the business trust is about 50 pages. So I break down every single paragraph of the trust so that you can understand the contents of the trust. You cannot operate a trust efficiently if you don't know what's inside of the trust. So I'm here to break down every single paragraph so that you can learn what's inside of the trust, okay? And then after I'm done breaking down the business trust, and I show you step by step how to set it up, then we dive into Q&A so I can answer any and all of your questions live. So we do not get off the Zoom calls until I answer your questions, okay? On Tuesday, we set up the family trust. So I break down every single paragraph of the family trust. And then from there, we dive into Q&A. On Wednesday, we set up the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So we break down every single paragraph of the ministry trust. And then after that, I show you guys how to become ordained ministers if that's what you want to do. and then we dive into Q&A. On Thursday, what we do is we focus on OPM. So the first thing is getting your EIN number so that you're able to open up those bank accounts. So I'll show you step by step how to get your EIN numbers for all three trusts. Then I give you a list of banks, and then we go through banking procedures and operations so that you can learn how to open up a bank account. And then we go through promissory notes so that you can document how much you're going to fund inside of that trust fund. And then our educator comes in and teaches you about business credit and business funding so that you can leverage OPM and get the money that you need in order to acquire the assets for the trust. On Friday, which is the last day, we focus on assets. So transferring your assets, as well as we also focus on taxes because everyone has tax questions. So what we do is on Friday, the first thing that we do is we take an inventory of your assets so that you can know what assets qualify to go inside the trust and what assets don't. So you got to know, what assets you have. And then I'll show you step by step how to transfer your real estate, how to fill out the quitclaim deed, how to turn it in or record it. And then I show you how to step by step how to place your cars into the trust, bill of sales, DMVs. Then I show you how to put your businesses into the trust. So business purchase agreements, amendments with the Secretary of State. And then lastly, our CPA educator comes in and he is going to teach you how to file taxes for the trust and all of your tax questions dealing with your trust and your LLCs, or if you have any other companies. So we do it together as a group. And the beautiful thing that I love about the actual workshop is that you are in a place and space where you are with other like-minded individuals and they are asking really good questions that you didn't even know that you wanted to know. So just being in that environment actually puts you in a position to where you're going to learn more, right? And so that is definitely where you want to be. And we get to assist you. We show you step by step, and you get to learn, how to do things the right way. And so the workshop is only $2,500. And as I mentioned, we're doing the workshop next week. So it is Monday through Friday, September 29th to October 3rd, okay? The last option is done for you. So what the done for you option is where we actually set up the trust for you. So we have multiple sessions where we educate you on the trust, and then you give us the information, and then we set up the family trust, we set up the business trust, and the tax exempt nonprofit trust. We apply for your EINs for you, and we assist you with transferring all of your assets into the trust. So you get individualized support. So it's not in a group and you're not by yourself. We really get to customize your structure. So it's super custom. And so this one is typically for people who have multiple assets, multiple businesses, or they don't have the time to do it themselves or even attend the workshops, okay? So with this program, with the Done For You, you still get access to the course, you still get access to the workshops, okay? So with that being said, all you have to do is just go to wealthytrustee.com and you'll be able to enroll into the program. So I want to actually show you guys what the program looks like as well as what a trust looks like. And only for those of you guys who are on the call today, you guys get to receive 30% off. So if you go to wealthytrustee.com and you put in the discount code TRUST30, then you will be able to receive 30% off, okay? And we're only running this to allow you to be able to get into the workshop that we have coming up on Monday, okay? So with that being said, let me show you guys what the actual program looks like. So give me a second here. Hold on. Let's see, escape, there we go. All right, so this is what the actual program looks like. So when you enroll into the course or the workshop or done for you, you get access to the course. And yes, it is lifetime access. So the first thing after your induction is you go straight into trust entity, where you learn what is the trust entity. You learn about the different parties, grantors, trustees, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the benefits of the trust, and the different types of trust. Then we dive into the tax exempt trust, where you learn and we break down the declarations, the articles, the bylaws. You learn how to get your EINs. Then we dive into the family trust, where you get into the declarations, bylaws. You learn how to get your EIN. And the same thing with the business trust with the indentures. And then you go into tax strategies, where you learn about tax exempt status. You learn about for-profit nonprofits, and you learn about distributable net income and how to avoid tax evasion. And then we go into asset protection, where you take the inventory of your assets, where you learn how to open up a bank account, a brokerage account, where you learn how to transfer your house, your cars, your insurance policies, and your businesses, and where you learn how to have board meetings, right? Because there's so many people that are operating entities and never have a board meeting for their entity. And then we go into wealth creation, where you learn how to operate a business, how to establish business credit. Then you learn how to invest in the stock market and how to do infinite banking with the life insurance policies in order for you to be your own bank. And then you go into wealth preservation, which is the you establishing the legacy crest, and then you go and you have your resources and your ebooks. So now quickly, I want to show you about the trust. So this is just an example of what one of our templates look like. And so everything that you see in red is what you will be filling out for your trust document, okay? So this is what we break down during the actual workshop. We break it down live. So with that being said, we are all done for today. So I do want to open up the floor for Q&A. If there's anyone who has any questions based off of what we went over today during the webinar. So any questions, you guys can come off mute. You can raise your hand. You can let me know. All right, let me see if there's any questions in the chat. So someone asked about the insurance business. Is it called Keyman Insurance? So there is a policy that's called Keyman Insurance for your business. So that is not what I'm referring to, but you can get that policy for a trust if you would like to. But I'm just referring to pretty much like a whole life policy where it insures your life. The next one is, how do we know that the trust is properly structured at the time that we're passing away? So you're gonna learn about the things that you need inside of a properly structured trust, okay? So there's many different components, and we teach you that. So we teach you about declarations, about bylaws, about trust constitutions, about schedules A, B, C, and D. We teach you about certificate of trust. So there's many different components that you want inside of a trust for you to truly know if it's properly structured. So the next question is, should attorney review or make sure that the trust is properly structured, or our needs in state? So they okay, so the first thing that you need to know is that a trust is a contract, and you have the power and authority to create your own contract, which means that you can create your own trust. You do not need an attorney in order to create your own trust. You can very well go to an attorney if you would like to. When you do go to an attorney, you are going to be limited because they are only going to set you up with a trust for that one state. So you cannot use it nationwide. You can only use it in that one state, and they are going to make your trust public. So that is a decision that you have to make, okay? So, let's see. Uh, is the program offered in the evenings as well? So no, it's only offered, so if you get the DIY courses on demand, you're able to do it whenever you want at your own time. The workshops are only during a specific time. So the specific time is from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. We only do the workshops once a month. So the workshop is coming up next week. After next week, then the next workshop would be 3 weeks after that. So it's every 4 weeks, okay? And the sessions are recorded. So sometimes we have people that are working and they're not able to either attend, and so they'll watch the recordings and then they'll book a one-on-one with me so that we can review, everything, and I can answer all of their questions. Some people that are working, they'll just, pop their headphones in, they'll be able to listen, and then they'll put their questions on the chat so that I'm still able to answer their questions during the live sessions, okay? So just know that you do have lifetime access to the workshop as well as to the recordings. So the next question is, can a trust get sued? Yes, a trust can get sued. So so there are individuals that can initiate a lawsuit against a trust. Let's see here. Can the business trust hold multiple LLCs? That is correct, yes. So the business trust, if you are going to structure it as a holding company, which is the way that it's designed, then it can own multiple LLCs. Now, I will tell you that it depends on the type of business that you're running. So you don't want to put a high liability business with a low liability business in the same business trust, okay? So you want the high liability business, which, for example, let's just say is a trucking company, right? Or, or a Toro business, or a medical service business, right? Those are high liability businesses, okay? So you don't want that business to be in the same business as like your real estate or your consulting or your e-com, okay? So you do want to separate those two, but yes, you can have multiple LLCs under one business holding trust. So someone asked, how much is the course? The course is $997. How can I add the LLCs to the trust? So we teach you how to add the LLCs into the trust. So we teach you step by step. So you'll do an agreement, and then an amendment to the articles of organization, and then you'll submit it with your Secretary of State. So what is the 30% discount code? So the code is TRUST30. Any payment plans? Yes, there are payment plans available. So if you go to our website, you'll be able to see the payment plans that we have that are available. You can get 30% off of those payment plan options. And if those options don't work for you, just reach out to my team and we can customize something for you as well. So if you do not have the time or the financial capacity to be able to enroll now, what you can do is you can put down a deposit so that you can secure your spot for the 30% off, okay? So the deposit link is going to be available inside of the chat. So can an auto trust? Yeah, car trust can hold multiple vehicles, yes. Can a nonprofit church trust be sued? Any trust can be sued.
Oh.
All right, any other last questions, comments, or concerns? Anybody else before we conclude our webinar for this evening?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. I came to the last presentation, but I want to come back to um hear it again. I did order the book. I could find volume one, can't find volume two. I ordered it on Amazon. It'll be here on Sunday. And then the other thing is I want to do the workshop, but my job is so complex. I won't be able to. I want to enjoy the workshop while I'm going through it. So I'm trying to figure that part out.
Absolutely. Oh, Monique, well, thank you so much for attending the last session and attending this session. And I'm glad that you are ordering the books because I always tell people you definitely want to go ahead and, and do your own research. It's just so vitally important. So I'm looking forward to hosting you in the workshop. So whenever you have the time and you're able to commit, then that will be great because you're going to learn so much and it's going to be life-changing and very impactful for you. So thank you, Monique. I appreciate that. All right. And let's see here. So someone asked for the link for the deposit. So Ivy, can you drop the link to the deposit? Let's see. So they said, how can we get in touch with you to put in the down payment? So you can always send us an email. You can always text the number that you received the Zoom link on. So I'll just put in the number here. I'm going to put the number inside of the chat. So it's 305-749-9215. That is the number that you can text. Here's the email, info@sevenwaystowealth.com. Our website also have a chat as well. Our website has a chat as well. And then let me get you the link for the down payment. 1 second. So someone asked about the recording. So yes, it is recorded. So I'm going to put the link inside of the chat for the recording for the replay. 1 second. Let's see, replay. Okay, the replay link is there. And then let me get the deposit link. Okay, so here's the link for the deposit. All right, any other last questions, comments, concerns? All right, guys. Well, it was a pleasure hosting tonight's webinar. So once again, I'm Christine Yvette. I'm the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth, and I just want to empower you guys that you guys are the generational curse breakers in your family, and I know this to be true. And so by you implementing what you learned today, you're going to be changing the trajectory of your family. You're going to be changing the lives of your kids and your kids' kids. So just take action on the information that I shared with you guys tonight. And I hope to see you guys in next week's workshop. So if you're able to attend, please get there because the year is dwindling down and you want to take action on this information because tomorrow is not promised. And so we all have to get our affairs in order. We all have to set up our estate and we have to do it as soon as possible. So with that being said, you guys have a blessed rest of your week, a blessed evening, and I will see you guys in the workshop next week. Bye.